Hello and welcome back to this SlimDevOps Live episode 14. Hello Peter, how are you?
14. Martin, good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, this was originally recorded live on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps. So if you would like to participate in these interactive workshops, then please come over there and give us a follow. So Peter, what's new?
Well, we had a pretty cool, review or feature today, console.dev, which is like one of my favorite newsletters. They have a great podcast. It's just like some really great people who put that out. They actually did a Q&A with John, our CEO, today, did a little review of our platform, our early access platform, gave us some nice feedback and nice pointers. And then featured us in their newsletter, which was super cool. So we got a lot of new people. There's some new people in Discord who came through that. I'm actually in the Slack channel for Strange Loop conference coming up. And somebody even pinged me in there and said, "Oh, I saw you guys in console.dev today." So glad to see that out. It's pretty cool. So check out the review. I linked it in Discord if people are in there, so they can read the Q&A with John. I think it's really good. It's fun.
Yeah, so. Excellent. Yeah. And you mentioned Discord, so let's get that up now. So although we're about to embark on another live workshop here, we're going to put out a call to action for you to come and join our Discord for a couple of reasons, not least that tomorrow we'll be doing another office hours in our Discord, which is a continuation of this workshop we're doing today. And you're going to explain in more detail what we're going to be doing a little later when we get to the relevant section in today's workshop, right?
Yeah, but I think it'll be similar. I think it was pretty successful last time, Martin. So like good job on doing that. I'm glad we had so many people there and new faces there last time too. That was really cool to see. And it's just like an open, friendly kind of bring your questions, bring your apps to work on. I'll work on slimming this app that I built today. Anybody who's pulled the container that I posted in Discord already knows it's a little bit of a monster. I think it's 900 megabytes. So we'll go through and do all the slimming stuff on it.
Nice. Later, so other than business growth stuff, what else have you been up to?
I guess it's business growth stuff. We're getting ready for conference season, and I think with everything going on with COVID and everything, nobody's really sure still, what travel is going to look like. I know it's challenging to get into the US and get out of the US. So I used the upcoming conferences as an excuse to buy myself a camera because I figured, we probably want to be doing some streaming there. We're going to have virtual booths. So we'll be at Open Source Summit, which Jillian is going to be speaking at. Monica is going to be speaking at. A couple of our other friends are going to be speaking at. So we'll be there doing some live streams into a virtual booth there. I mentioned Strange Loop. I'll be there if anybody's around and wants to meet up. We'll also have a booth at KubeCon, and we plan to be doing quite a few things at KubeCon. We know a lot of people are actually not going in person, but we'll be attending virtually. So we're going to be doing some like live stuff from the booth and whatnot. And so I figured that that's all a good excuse to convince my wife that I needed to buy a new camera.
Sounds perfectly reasonable to me. When is it not a good time to buy a new camera?
Yeah.
And I hear you've put your new camera to good use already.
I have. So, I think it's, it's a really good segue into this, what we were working on for today's workshop, because, as you and I were talking about, a really good way of thinking about volumes for Docker containers, right, is to think about sort of images or databases, right? Files or databases. That's really where you kind of come into using volumes quite a bit. And so like a photo sharing app is sort of like the best thing for us to do. So I, of course, took my new camera, and it's a little more complicated than I know how to use it yet. But I know everybody wanted cookies last time. We had a big discussion about cookies. So I made these myself, obviously, for everybody in chat, all of these cookies that I made for everybody. Pay no mind that they're different sizes and look a little more professional than something I could do. And of course, we have our tea, right? Because we always drink tea on this show. And so we have our tea. And so I took some photos of cookies and T. And of course, last time we were talking about swag. So I took some photos of swag as well, and Jillian helped me out. She took some photos of the swag that she sent out to people last time.
Right.
And I built a little photo app, a photo sharing app, where we can upload photos of cookies, tea, and swag. And that's what we're going to do in this workshop. So
wonderful. It is a perfect harmony of happenstance. I love it. Right then. So before we jump into that, I'd just like to welcome back. Hello, Yannick. Hello, Diddle Danny. Hello, Eric, Big Pod. Welcome back to all of you. And I see there's a few others who are watching. So if you're new here, thanks very much for stopping by. And, feel free to say hello in the chat. It's always good to see who's returning and who's new here. We're a friendly crowd and we like to get to know those of you that are coming along for these sessions. So please, feel free to get involved if you'd like to. So with that, Pieter, what are we going to do first? Where should I head?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we go to, so I linked in the browser to the GitHub repository where we've been keeping the README files for this. So we can start there. Hopefully people saw that. Again, if you're joining new, like I said, if you're coming from console.dev or you just heard of us from some other way, we've been doing this Containers 101 series. So now this is the third one that we're doing. And the evolution of this is kind of like, we started with some more advanced techniques in containers and how to slim them. And the feedback we got was like, well, hold on, let's start at the beginning and start with what is a container, and let's go through that. So I think it's been really useful. It's been really fun. The workshops have been super interactive. And so I'm actually going to do this one. So I'm going to try to live up to the expectations that Martin has set so far for us in this. But so this is the third one, and this is about volumes. And volumes are a way that we can store persistent data from containers. So for some people that are here, this might be a little bit of, kind of remedial. And if that's the case, then please, talk in chat, let us know other ideas that you have or help us out. I'm still relatively new to containers. So if you are new to containers, you're in a good place. And this is we're just all sort of learning together. But the main thing that we want to remember about containers, right, is that they're ephemeral, right? They're designed to sort of be created and disposed of and scaled up and scaled down, right? And that creates a lot of challenges for data management, right? So if you're going to say store images, store files, you're going to have a database of information. You can't just throw it in the container and let it stay there, because when you take that particular container away, you're going to lose it. And that's where volumes come in, right? So yeah, so that's where we're going to start. And Martin, you and I were chatting, and we thought it would be fun. So in my family, the number one gift right now in my family is called the Aura photo frame. I don't know if people have these, but it's basically a way you can go on your app and you can upload photos to someone else's, IoT device. So my parents have one, and we can upload photos of us or the dog or whatever, and then they get it on their frame. And we said, okay, well, let's try to roll a home server version of this Aura frame, and that'll be a good way to think about kind of volume. So that's what we're going to do. You have the link to the Git repository, so it definitely helps if you get that updated, because you'll be able to see some of the files and folders and structures like that. Since we're kind of moving files and folders around, it's going to be important. And then the main thing, and you can start doing this while I'm talking, is to do Docker pull this command. So Docker pull slim.psv photo app :start, or pi photo app :start. And that's going to be the container that we're going to use. So now the last couple times that we've done these, we've used Martin's YouTube commenting Python app, and we use that as a way to look at containers. This is a different app that I've created, but I just created a container for it. The app itself is not really that interesting. It's just a really basic Flask app that has some generic JavaScript photo libraries in it. But the main thing is that, I've now created this Docker image for it. And now you all can go just pull that Docker image from Docker Hub. And now we're working off the same app. We have basically the same exact thing that we're doing. So once that pull is completed for you, let's do the Docker run command, which we've used in the past too. And Martin, you can stay in the browser, but I'm going to run this over in my command line. Yeah, we will be doing a bunch of command line work today, because that's sometimes what you're doing in Docker. But when you run that command, all it should do is it should give you an output that gives you basically what looks like a SHA value. I'll show it to you in a second, and then bring you back to the command line. And once that's running, that's going to expose the app on localhost port 5000. So if you can't see what I'm doing, I just typed localhost 5000 into my browser, and I have this app. And all of you should be able to have gotten that. If you really do want to go through and like rebuild the app yourself or run this from the Docker file, you absolutely can do that just by pulling the Git repository and going into the PyPhoto app folder and doing Docker build period to run from the Docker file. But you shouldn't have to do that. You should just be able to pull the Docker image and then run that Docker command, right? So what is this thing doing? So all it does, like I said, it's a very simple app. It has a few photos of our Slim.AI swag, which I know some of you have already gotten. And then it has this really like sort of basic little uploader. And like I said, we have photos of swag and cookies and tea. And I basically have these photos of some new swag, right? The Slim Jam sticker. We're doing a Slim Jam right now. So that's, we'll get these stickers out to people, but that's our Slim Jam sticker. Like I said, I have a photo of these cookies, which I totally 100% made for everybody. Absolutely made for everybody.
I'm not convinced.
And there's definitely still 4 of them left. Absolutely. They have not dwindled over the day. Those cookies. And then a photo of the tea, which I took with my new camera and was the only photo I was able to get off of my new camera. But so I want to upload those images to this photo app, right? Because I want to start sharing those, right? But this is running in a container right now, right? This application's running in a container. So, if I go to upload, and here's kind of the moment of truth, I'm going to upload the cookies photo first. So I'm uploading the cookies photo, and I'm going to click upload on that. And now I admit the CSS in this thing is terrible. The image sizes. I'm not much of a front end person, so this is a little challenging for me. But if I scroll through these, okay, great. I uploaded my cookie photo, and there's the image of the cookies. Cool, that's great. Now you're running your containers. You don't have those, right? So if we go over to the command line, Martin, we can go over to the command line and look at what just happened. So give me a check on whether everybody can see this okay, but I want to make sure everybody can see okay. I can make it bigger or smaller. But I ran my Docker run command here, and it ran this container. It gives me this response, which is just really the SHA value of the container or whatever, the ID of the container, if you will. And if I do Docker PS, I can see that that's running here. And that container has an ID of this, and it has a name of Cool Johnson, which is just like sort of the little shorthand that Docker gives everything. We could name it ourselves, but we don't need to. And it's running, on localhost port 5000 like we knew, right? If I look over here on the left side, this is actually my local Git repository. So this is my local file system that I'm running. Here we can see those 3 images, the Cody socks, the Cody stickers, and the Cody t-shirts, right? But no cookies image, right? Even though I did upload the cookies image, right? So where is the cookies image? Well, what I can do is I can use this Docker exec command, right? And if you remember last time we used this -it flag, which just really means like kind of interactive mode through TTY. You don't need to worry about it too much, but usually when you want to get into the container, you want to use the -it flag. So exec lets me run a command on an existing container.
Okay,
right?
before you do that, we've had some feedback that if you could just make the text a bit bigger or the window a bit bigger, that would be preferable. Yep. There we go.
How is that? Might give me a little bit of a headache here, but how's that for everybody? Does that look good?
I will monitor the chat, but it looks good to me.
Okay. I can try to adjust the window size a little bit, but okay, cool. So like I said, I'm going to use this Docker exec command. Hopefully people can see okay. Definitely let us know if you can't. And if you remember that container, the shorthand name for it was Cool Johnson. I could also use that ID that we saw on the left side of the Docker PS command. And I'm going to run just bash, right? Because I just want to get into the container and take a look at it. Right. So if you remember what you did last time, Martin, right? And we went through and did that sort of like basic container optimization. And we changed the user to make it safe. And we did some other things that'll help the image size and secure some of the services and stuff. We've done none of that for this image. So we'll have to go through and do that tomorrow during the office hours. But that's why you see it, running as root. Most containers are going to run as root. But we can do an ls in here and we can see, okay, these are all of the things that I copied over from the Git repository into the container. Probably shouldn't have copied over the Docker file, that's okay. But then if we do an ls.la on, so where this application is keeping the images is in the static images folder, that's just Flask convention. And if we look at that, now we have cookies here, right? So the cookies image is there, and that's why it's showing up in the app when we're running it. But it's not here on my local file, right? So if I exit this, I'll clear again just so everybody can see. If I exit this, and let's say I stop that container, right? Cool Johnson. This will take a second. But when I'm stopping the container, I'm not actually getting rid of the container. I'm not killing it. I'm not deleting it. I'm not discarding it. I'm just stopping it so it's not running. So if I go over to the browser window, I don't need to do this, but just take my word for it. If I go to the browser window and I run the app now, it's not going to run. It's going to give me an unable to connect signal, right? But if I start the container back up through Docker start, oops. Right, so we just stopped the container, then we started again. If we go back over to the browser window, Martin, I can show you that it was stopped before. And now if I reload, right, and we go back through this images, cookies is still there, right? Because we didn't delete the container.
Right.
Cookies is still there, right? Now, if I go back into the command line, and I actually kill the container, I do docker kill Cool Johnson, right? So I just killed that particular container instance. And let's look at Docker PS just so we can see, okay, that's not running. I only have this weirdo Moby build kit running, which I'll get into at some point. But right, so now I have no container running whatsoever. But if I do my docker run command again, right, it's going to create a new container for me, and I can do docker ps again. Now this one is, it's the same exact container image, but it has a new name. In this case, admiring Grider, whatever that is. These are weird. I don't know what product manager at Docker thought this up. I would love to hear the story behind these things at some point, but they're fun, and that's cool. But if we go back, so if you go back to the browser window, right? So I'm going to just reload this page again. So now I'm hitting admiring Grider or whatever, that container. It's running at the same address. It's running the same app. But what did we lose, right? No cookie photo, right? So this is a problem, right? Because you're going to spin these apps up and take them down and kill them. That's the whole idea of the containers, right? So what are we going to do about this? Well, this is where we're going to get into volumes, okay? So if we go back over here and we go back into the GitHub repo, right? We kind of just did all of these pieces and we're sort of down here at this wait thing. So Docker provides this sort of little explanation of how volumes work. We're not going to get a lot into like sort of the differences between bind mounts or volumes, tempfs mounting. Danny probably knows a ton about this because Danny's pretty schooled in containers and why you would use different ones. We're mostly going to be just mounting local directories to our container because I think that shows, like, at least from a beginner level, that shows like that's the most easiest thing to see. There are a few other things you can do with volumes, and then next time when we get into networking and sort of microservices or multi-container apps, volumes really come into play and you're really leaning on them heavily. right? So we're just gonna, but the cool thing about volumes is that we actually don't need to do anything different to the container. I don't need to change the app. I don't need to pull another container. You don't have to go pull another container with a different tag or anything. We don't have to do anything. The only thing that we have to change is our Docker run command. And in the Docker run command, we're going to be using this -v for volume. And on the left side of the -v is going to be the local directory that we want to mount. And the right side is going to be the same directory in the container that we want to connect. So we're going to connect those two. They're effectively going to be the same folder, okay? And then we're just going to run the same image. So the one note here is that you will have to like use your local path. It has to be an absolute value in this, or at least it was in my testing. And if anybody knows a way to get around that, I'm all ears. I gave myself a little shorthand so I didn't have to keep typing out my entire path, which is dull for all of you, and just made a little environment variable that goes to that path. So that's what I'm going to do. So yeah, Martin, if we go back over to the command line, we can see, this full thing. So again, we've got Docker run, and we're going to be on the same ports. We're mapping port 5000 externally to port 5000 in the container.
Yep.
And
whilst you're just typing that, for anyone that's following along, it's important to point out that the paths here have to be absolute paths, not relative paths. So make sure Pieter's environment variable here has the fully qualified path to his directory.
Yeah. So, oops. But don't copy the $signs like I always do. I just put those there so you're in a bash script. Oh, okay. So we've got our first Docker error. I knew this was going to happen at some point. But in this case, I just made a stupid little mistake, which was that I didn't stop the previous container, our old friend, admiring Grider. So I just need to kill that one. I will rerun that same command that I had before, possibly. So going to just rerun that command again. And now it's running, right? So now before we go to this other part, I just want you to pay special attention. So if you have this open, it's a good thing to do to open up the actual, like the local file directory in the Git repo, as long as you're running this in the same, so you can see here, I'm like running this in the same directory that, I'm doing all of this work in my Git repo. And over here on the right side, I actually have my local Git repo. That's my local file system, right? So if I go back over to the browser, and I reload the page, I'm still at localhost 5000. I still have my same 3 images that I always have, because that's new container, right? I'm going to go browse a photo of our T. I'm going to upload the T photo, and I'm going to select a category of T, and I'm going to hit upload on that. And I get this success message. I'm going to do one more. I'm actually going to do the stickers too, just so we can really see what's happening here.
I can hear sounds of joy through the internet as Monica sees us uploading photographs of tea.
Yeah, that one's just for Monica. I love tea. I happen to be drinking some last night, so I think cookies, tea, and swag are kind of our things right now. Now I uploaded those 3. I've got my photos. I've got my sticker photo, which I just uploaded. And then I've got my tea photo that I just uploaded, right? So now let's go back to the command line and look at this magic over here on the right side. Now I have these same 2 images. If you remember before, they didn't show up in my local file directory, but they did show up here, right? So now we've made that connection between that folder that's in the container and the folder that's on my local hard drive in my local Git repository, right? Now I can still, if I'll clear this, and if I go do Docker PS, right? And so I want to know what my container is. This one's called Ecstatic Django. That's a fun one. Ecstatic Django. I'm going to do the Docker exec it Ecstatic Django bin bash, right? I'm just gonna shell. Oh, I get that wrong. Sorry, with the zoom in, my eyes are a little bad. What is this called? I guess it's just elastic jang. Okay, static jang. So clear again. So docker exec -it static jang bin bash, right? So now I'm in that container. I'm in the one that's running. And if I do the lsla static images again, right now I'm seeing these that are there, right? So T is there and SlimJam stickers are there, right? So cool. So they're both in the container and they're also in my local file system, right? And I can do like one more, right? I could even go in and say delete the SlimJam stickers, right? And move that one in the trash. And then if I do this again, right, the change is instantaneous here in this container. And then if I go back over to the browser and I search, right, you know, I have the T photo still, but I no longer have that other one. Right. So this is cool. This is like, you know, kind of a magic moment for a lot of people, you know, like, okay, now I get it, right? You can see where you might use this in a, you know, say tying an S3 bucket to, you know, some images that you want to store locally, really useful for local development to say, okay, well, like, where is this stuff going, right? There are a few other things that you can do with these volumes. You can create your own volumes. We'll talk about that in a minute. But, you know, being able to do this really allows you to do a bunch of different things, including if we go back over to the command line, what we can do, and I'm not even going to copy and paste this because this is such an easy thing to do. So if I want to spin up another container, so I have one running right now, right? I have ecstatic Jang running, right? But if I want to spin up another container on, say, a different port, right? I'm just going to change the port number on the left side, this 5000 to 5005, let's say. And I'm going to run that. That's going to give me another container running, same exact container instance, but it's also still mounting that same volume in the same way, right? So if I, you know, again, do Docker PS, right? You know, now I've got two containers running, one on 5005, one on 5000. If I go back over to the browser and open up a new tab and I do localhost 5005, right? What do I get? Well, I still get the T image, right? So now that one's also going to the local, you know, to that same local directory. And if I go and I upload, let's upload cookies, right? Okay, well now cookies is in there. And then if I go back over to port 5000, so remember this is a different container, this is ecstatic Jang, right? Cookies, right? So now we're sharing data between all of these containers, and you can imagine in sort of like an auto-scaling environment, right? This is going to be really, really valuable, really valuable to do with a bunch of different containers, right?
Okay.
So
before we go a bit further, there's a couple of things here. So first of all, Eric points out that yes, this mounting volumes stuff is, you know, critical for the work he does with, you know, data analytics, with you know, data science and all the rest of it. And Yannick, I think you've just had a light bulb moment with, you know, the purpose of volumes and now how you can scale, you know, your application by using this mechanism. Yannick did have a question. I think he may have fixed it. If you haven't, Yannick, just repost your question for me and I'll come back to it.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, yeah, Eric brings up a good point. I was going to share a little bit of database work, though. I will admit that, well, I'll admit two things. One thing, my computer's trying to force quit some application right now, so I don't know if I have a memory leak in my program or something, but I'll figure that one out in a second. But I did struggle a bit with the, hold on one second. I did struggle a bit with, oh shit. Hey Martin, are you still there? Am I still on? I'm just frozen,
I can hear you. I see that your video is stuttering a bit, but I can hear you, although your image...
Okay, frozen and kind of an unfortunate version there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool. I mean, if you can still hear me, I think, we can just keep talking. I don't know if you want to take the share off. That was more or less most of the demonstration I wanted to do. I was going to highlight for people that this is really useful for databases as well, because most databases have local files and folders that they use. So it's a good way to create databases, but that is going to be, something that we get into, in the next session. So maybe we kind of save that, given that
right.
My Firefox is causing some problems here. So
okay, so we'll just hope that the internet gremlins fix themselves, and I will just recap a couple of things based on some of the things I've seen in the chat. So first of all, I saw Eric comment about he could never remember which way around the port selection goes when you're starting the same app on a different port. Turns out we couldn't remember that either, because we made that mistake in dress rehearsals. So that's that. We managed to fix that. I'm wondering if I may have lost Pieter entirely, but I'll get to that in just a moment. And then so if Pieter's video is stuttering, that's through my connection. Let me know if you've lost me, because obviously I'm doing the stream here. It looks like we've lost Pieter entirely. So I will just go up here for the moment. And what have we got here? So Danny says a good use for volumes is when you're iterating on an app service. Yeah, okay. And you can't mount the source code from your PC where you're editing the content. Indeed. And there's a potential future topic for the concept of separate containers for databases versus volume based, and that is exactly... Welcome back, Pieter. I can see you. I need to go to the control room and just bring in your audio. Hopefully we can all hear Pieter again. There we go. So I'm just answering some of the chat. And so the point you hit on there, Eric, is precisely what we're going to be doing in the next Containers 101. Pieter is going to be breaking this app up into a front-end container, a back-end container, and a database container, and then using Docker Compose to network and orchestrate those three containers together to create one logical whole. So, this is where we start to level up again, sort of the container skills, and we start to talk about microservices and, using a collection of containers together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because if you look at that app, right, the current app, I'm humble about my own coding abilities, right, and that it's kind of ugly. It doesn't get a lot of data to the back end. It's probably not that performant because it's just written in Flask and not much else. And it uses a SQLite database, which is pretty lightweight, and obviously crashes my Firefox anytime I try to talk about it. So what we're going to do in the next iteration, we're going to break it into three. I know we had a couple people join us in Discord recently that are into Vue.js and Nuxt, and really what I wanted to do with this app was do a Vue front end on it and a Node back end on it. But I actually don't know Node well enough, and Martin was talking to me yesterday, and I was tearing my hair out. But I think that's what we'll try to do. We'll try to break it into at least a really beautiful front end, something that's a little more robust than that Flask app that we have. A more robust back end that's a microservice, and then do it in a Mongo database that runs separately on its own. And that should actually be a lot easier than kind of what we were trying to do here, which was actually like really sort of run three services in one container, which is like the absolute wrong way to do Docker or try to do Docker. You want one service per container, and that's the way you do it. So
excellent. So thank you for those of you that were confirming that it wasn't me that dropped off the internet. Yannick goes on to ask, what's the overhead of using those volumes? Well, the way we've done it today, under the hood, Docker is using bind mounts to access those volumes from within the container, it's almost zero overhead. The only time that becomes, well, for the purposes of what we're doing now, you can think zero overhead. It is just a bind mount. In other more complex containers where you're binding to files, it can get expensive, but for binding directories, it's cheap. Paddy NI goes on to say that the order of host : container is the same order for mapping volumes. Yes, it is. It's the same for ports and volumes. Yeah. And then Yannick says, in terms of access time and all that good stuff. Yeah. So Yannick, think of it as native. The overhead is very small. There is some additional overhead if you've got things like setcomp and AppArmor. And a long time ago, I actually had to profile the impact of using those container primitives on the Raspberry Pi for the Raspberry Pi Foundation for some work I did with them in the past, and it was statistically irrelevant. It was so minuscule. It was within the margin of error. So yeah, think of it as not as native performance. Let's have a look here. So yes, Eric is agreeing with Danny over the use of containers, and Esme's now giving it an ooh, that's how containers are supposed to work. Yes, indeed. Yeah. We hope so.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a light bulb moment for me for a little while. I was like struggled for a long time. I was just used to kind of like creating EC2 instances on Amazon, and then I just throw everything in the kitchen sink in there and get it all to run. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And then once you kind of discover this and you realize, okay, well, I can actually like hook up a database, then I can actually run the database as a separate service, then I can run my backend and my front end separate services. It gets to this developer experience thing too, right? Because you might have some really good front end developers who want to write in Vue or Next.js or something like that. And you might have some backend people writing in Java or whatever the case is, Go, something like that. And so being able to kind of mix and match and have a container that is just for front end, have something just for backend, have a database, it just allows you to kind of segment the languages as well that you're using in your ecosystem. So.
Yeah, and Yannick points out that in next to no time, we'll have 47 containers all talking to each other. Yes, entirely possible. Big Pod then says, Docker Compose and then on to Kubernetes. So we have made Kubernetes out of scope for the sort of workshops at the moment. But Big Pod, I know that you are Kate's aficionado. I believe you're using micro-Kates. So perhaps, how about this, Big Pod? After we do the next workshop where we break up our stuff into microservices, and we're doing that with Docker Compose, if you're interested, let me know in our Discord. Do you want to do like an office hours with me where you can take that same example and show us how to run it up in micro-Kates or something like that? If you're interested in that, I'm totally down for putting something together along those lines. I think that would be fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I've been trying to get my head around Kubernetes and just hasn't clicked for me yet. So I would love to see somebody do it. If Big Potty can do that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so. And Eric says he has plans to migrate some sophisticated Shiny apps. Shiny is a UI framework for R into separate containers for the app and the API backend services. Eric, if you want any help from us to hook up some example applications through the Slim developer platform, which we showed you in the office hours last week, then let me know and I'll help you get that hooked up so that we can, take advantage of what we've learned about, minifying and exploring containers based on Rocker and R. So Big Pod confirms he is indeed using Kates, micro-Kates, and yes, he's interested. That'll be great, Big Pod. I'll be in touch and we'll schedule something in probably for a couple of weeks' time, something like that, I imagine. And Yannick says, how does it work with reboots? Running from the command line creates another container each time. Well, maybe that is a topic for another workshop in the future to explore, like how you actually sort of orchestrate containers at a for production use, rather than what we've been demonstrating here, which is very much sort of local development, iteration, and sort of testing. But yeah, we could get into that. Maybe down the line we could even get into using something like Pound or HA proxy as a front end service to load balance across multiple containers that are sitting there, to show you how to do redundant microservices and things of that nature, so you can do horizontal scaling. So, hey, Keysor 8, I think that's what, or Keysor 6, sorry, the chat is very small. Thanks very much for stopping by. I don't think I've seen you in here before, but thanks for joining us. He says, Kate's gets very complicated very fast after you get over the initial learning curve of the basics. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Understatement. Yeah, it'll be very, right.
And I'll just remind everybody that this is part of our community response to help level up everyone from a standing start of I know nothing about containers, and week by week we're taking you through the process. And tomorrow Pieter and I will be running an office hours in our Discord. I've just put a link to that in the live chat. So join up there, and we're going to take this app. I noticed Yannick complained earlier that it's a massive container. It's about 900 megabytes, I think. So tomorrow in our office hours, we're going to use our open source tool, DockerSlim, to minify that container and, carve off some of that fat. And one of the things I was working on earlier on a live stream on my own channel is creating a script to simplify the installation of DockerSlim. So you'll all get to try that out for the very first time, and we'll use you as guinea pigs for that to make sure it works.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for the temporary pain. There are a couple reasons, and it gets into some of the things that, some of the reasons that Kyle, created DockerSlim in the first place, right? Like, so what was I doing with this app? I was actually trying to install some libraries. I was trying to install MongoDB in the app because I was like, okay, well, it's not the right way to do it. But for everybody here, I can run the database, and then I'll show where the database gets hooked up back to the volume, mounted back to the volume. And I couldn't do it. And I kept on trying, and I was like, well, if this was Ubuntu, it would be easier to install MongoDB in Ubuntu, but it's actually not that easy to do it in any of the distributions, even the full distributions, right? So I left the large container saying like, okay, well, maybe I'll come back to it and do this. Now, truth is that thing has a ton of stuff in it that it doesn't need. It has some things that it really, really does need. And so I think it'll be interesting tomorrow, now that we have like a real live app that we kind of know what's inside of it, and we know what libraries it's using, and we know that it has some images, and it has this front end, and it has this database component. Slimming that will be actually really interesting to see what DockerSlim does with it. Yep. We can try doing it with Alpine as well and compare those two things. So I think it'll be an interesting office hours to just go through that process. And I haven't done it with this container, so it'll be a learning for me as well.
Right. And if it all goes well with the following wind, then maybe we can hook that up to the Slim developer platform, and then use the container diff to actually show, what happened. What did DockerSlim actually do in glorious Technicolor and quite a lot of detail. We started off with this large container. We now have a minified container, but what got removed? And that is also a useful debugging tool, because you may notice something that is removed that maybe the stimulation in the minification process didn't hit yet, and you want to make sure is always included. So Kiesel goes on to say, even the standard parts are horribly complicated, and this is a continuation of the commentary around Kubernetes.
Kate, yeah.
Yeah, this is why, generally speaking, we've made Kate sort of out of scope for this work, because we're really introducing container best practices and tooling around container creation and deployment, but not so much around sort of the at web scale management of the container lifecycle. But big pod's up for educating us, at least on a small scale, with micro-Kate.
Yeah.
So let's start there, and we'll see where that journey takes us.
Yeah, well, I think Kate's also kind of explains that, like, why containers, right? Well, containers are what are going into Kubernetes, and that's how you're scaling your app, and Kubernetes is how you're orchestrating it and all of that. So I think you've been getting a little, even if we got sort of a high level, or if people could kind of help us out, just understand that, then, it makes the why you spend all this time with containers and optimizing them and making them run fast and making them safe. It all sort of comes together, because those are the things that you're going to be using in that infrastructure downstream.
Yeah. So Kiesel says, if we ever start doing advanced workshops, to let them know. So Kiesel, I see you've followed us. That's great here on Twitch. If you join our Discord as well, you'll see the announcements of the other events and workshops we're running. We will be running advanced workshops. We're going to rope in our engineering team that are using, all the advanced techniques, technologies and tooling to run our SaaS platform at scale. So yes, we'll totally get into that stuff, we'd love to have you along for that.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, I think the next one that we have on the schedule is actually working with build packs.
Right.
So I don't know if you've played around with those too much, but our CTO Kyle, co-founder and the creator of DockerSlim, he wants to do one on kind of showing the ins and outs and the pros and cons of using build packs and doing that. Realistically, it'll probably be after KubeCon at this point, because we're pretty jammed up. We have a lot of stuff before then. But yeah, check back with us, and definitely we'll get that one on the schedule pretty soon. So.
Yep. And in the meantime, if anyone encounters any interesting topics around containers, container creation, and any of the tools that we've shown you, and you run into a stopping block, feel free to hop into our Discord. You'll find the link in the footer of the URL above, and I'll just paste it into the live chat now for one good measure. But yeah, we can continue the conversation there, answer your questions, help you with what what you want to do, and welcome your feedback. And you'll also find the opportunity to apply for some Slim swag and stuff like that in Discord as well, which I know a number of the people that here this week took advantage of last week. And one of our colleagues, Gillian, has been shipping multicolored Slim swag around the world.
Yes, and we're working on the cookies still, but this batch isn't going to get out to anybody. I'm sorry. I'm just going to be honest about that. So.
Oh, well. Right. Well, I think that's all we've got for this week, right? Slim. All we got time for this
PSV. That's
this week.
That's how people are going to know me.
So let's just run through very quickly. Here's our Discord. You could scan that QR code if you're looking at the screen now, or there's that long, complicated URL. It's also in live chat. Our platform is the Slim Developer Platform. If you go to Slim.AI, we've added more early invites to our SaaS platform. And if you want to know more about that, then do join us for our office hours tomorrow in Discord, because we will hook up the work that we're doing to the Slim Developer Platform tomorrow. And for those of you that haven't seen it, you will get a introduction to that, and you'll know how to start using it and take advantage of it. And this is the tool that we're going to be exercising tomorrow, DockerSlim. That's our open source core product that we'll be using to make all of that minification happen.
Cool.
So Pieter, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm at PS Van on Twitter. And what about you, Martin?
I am M_Wimpress at Twitter, and we are at SlimDevOps on Twitter. So you can follow us there and find out what we're up to and what we're doing, what events we're at, what tutorials and workshops and things like that we're offering. And we hope to see you all in another one of these live streams or in our Discord very soon.
I'm going to go eat some cookies.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.